Hello, everybody. It's David here at Fifth Hammer coming to you with another classic 5th edition battle report. We have for you folks today not one army, not two armies, not three armies, but four armies coming together on the tabletop. We have the Empire teaming up with their friends, the High Elves, who will be facing off against their ancient foe, the Dark Elves, who've brought along some Orc and Goblin friends. This should be a good one, folks. Let's dive in. So today we're going to be playing out Scenario 6, Ambush, which you can find on page 29 of your 5th edition battle book. And we have the Ambush Army versus the Ambusher. And what you've got here is the Empire Army is going to be coming from the left to link up with the High Elf Army, who's going to be coming from the right, and across from them, lying in wait, are the Dark Elves and the Goblin allies. So one of the things that's interesting about this particular scenario here is that the ambushed army is allowed 50% more points than the ambusher. So our High Elves and Dark Elves are going to be coming in at 3,000 points combined, whereas our Dark Elves and their Night Goblin friends are going to be coming in at 2,000 points. Again, this is going to be a variable turn scenario as I did it last time. I'm not going to roll before the game. I don't like it that way. We're going to roll at the end of turn 4. If it comes up a 1 or a 2, game's going to end at turn 4. On turn 5, it'll end on a 1 through a 4, and otherwise it'll end automatically on turn 6. Some other things to note about this particular scenario are that troops who have special deployment cannot do so. So units like scouts, shadow warriors, etc., who can normally deploy out of their own deployment zone as long as they're concealed from the enemy, they can't do so. They have to deploy in their battle lines with the rest of the rank and file troops. The other thing that's going to be really interesting in this one is that the ambushed army, here the Empire and the High Elves, are going to have to deploy in march formation. I'm going to show you that momentarily. So they're basically marching in columns while these Dark Elves and Night Goblins come crashing down on them. And we're going to see here in a moment, are they going to be able to shift their battle lines in time in order to repel the ambush. So it should be a good one. Let's take a look at the battlefield here, and you guys can see how it's all going to go down. So here's a quick overview of the battlefield. As you can see, it's divided by a river, which we're going to say is almost impassable. Units can brave it at their peril, but any model who's going to try to traverse it is going to have to roll equal to or less than their strength, or else be pulled away by the current. So that's going to be pretty risky. Otherwise, the only safe place to cross is going to be up here at the bridge. And as you can see, we've got our Empire troops here marching in column. They're going to try and link up with their High Elf friends. And across from them, already deployed in their battle formation here, you've got the Dark Elves, and then linking up with them are some Night Goblin allies who perhaps came out of that cave over there and are gearing up to take revenge against the men and halflings of the Empire. Let's take a quick look at the troops here. We've got some knightly orders here with the Empire General. We've got a Jade Wizard there. Our friendly halflings who ran off the field last time, survived the chase from the Corsairs, are coming back. We've got the cannon. We've got the militia who also ran to fight another day. We've got the handgunners who survived. The spearmen who also fled off the table. The pistoliers are here, leading up the column, and linking up across from them are the Illyrian Reavers. Thought those would be the guys in the fore of the High Elf march. Then we have a High Elf general on his griffin coming to meet the men of the Empire. Some sword masters, a Hoeth behind them. Some archers, some spearmen, a bolt thrower, some shadow warriors, and a High Elf hero bringing up the rear. And across from them, we have our Dark Elves our Dark Elf General on Cold One. No battle standard bearer this time. He's just a normal standard bearer. We've got the Hydra, who we're all hoping will not be having an argument with himself this time and get to work straight away. We've got some Dark Elf Corsairs for you, some Dark Elf Scouts, some Squig Hoppers coming off the mountain, and trailed behind them are some Night Goblin Archers with a Shaman. And then across the river from them, fittingly, we have 3 River Trolls. We have 5 Goblin Wolf Riders, and we have a big block of Night Goblin Spearmen led by the Goblin General and a Night Goblin Battle Standard Bearer. And then we've got some Common Goblin Archers coming up behind them to support them. So the story for today's battle is going to be that in the wake of their defeat at the village in our last battle report, the Empire, however, was able to quit the field in good order. And they were able to retreat from the village relatively intact and send out a call for aid from some nearby High Elven ships that were passing by. And Nordlanders, being good naval men, were able to get the message in their boats to them. And the High Elves, hearing of the malicious Dark Elves and what they were doing to the Nordland countryside, decided they would risk sending a small detachment to come help the men of the Empire. And they were going to meet here at Mainan's Bridge and have a pact of friendship where they would work together to hunt down these Dark Elves that were ravaging the Nordland countryside. But as you can see, all did not go according to plan. The Dark Elf Scouts that you see here pursued the men of the Empire and watched their every move. And they saw the ships go out to intercept the High Elf fleet, and they decided they couldn't afford to take any more chances. And so they went into the hills of Nordland and brought forth these goblins who didn't have the courage to fight the Empire on their own, but with a promise of Dark Elf aid and of a Hydra, the goblins found their courage, at least for the moment, and decided, with the help of the scouts, to spring a trap on their 2 enemies, the men of the Empire and their delicious halflings, and the Dark Elves pursuing their most ancient and hated of foes, the High Elves. So for the first time on the channel, we're going to be incorporating some magic items in today's battle from the 5th edition magic supplement. And the way that I like to do these is by using Rick Priestley's White Dwarf 222 article called Magic Revisited. There's a variant in there called the Dangerous Free Thinking Radical variant, and that's the one I like to use, where basically you just randomly deal out magic items to each side, and as far as coming up with what number to give, I just roll 2d6 and a d3, add them together. You take the higher, you round up if you need to, and whatever that number is the total number of magic items for the game. So, for example, if you get a 10, then each side gets 5 magic items. So let's go ahead and roll here and see what we get. So this one is 5 plus 2 is 7. Rounding that up gives us 8. And that'll mean each side gets 4 items. We'll shuffle those out and take a look and see what everybody gets. So here you can see the pile. It's a big pile. And yeah, kind of hard to shuffle, but I threw it around a bit off camera. So hopefully it's good and shuffled up from the last time that we did this. And the way that I do it is if I draw a card that doesn't work for one side, I just have them redraw it. So right, if that works, goblins draw something for the High Elves, they'll just toss it and pick something else. So let's see. We'll give first one to the good guys here. And let's see, a Dispel Magic Scroll. How exciting. That'll go right on that Jade Wizard, I'm sure. Then for our ambushers, we've got the Banner of Arcane Protection. Not sure what that does, but sounds kind of cool. Then for High Elves and Empire, they've got a Relic Sword. We'll take a look at that in a minute. The Ambushers, a Gold Sigil Sword. Sounds fancy. Then we've got a Chalice of Sorcery here. Also sounds like a wizard item. Blade of Leaping Copper. Pretty sure that gives you +1 attack. That's always useful. That's 3 aside. So 1 more. Then the wizard got Skull Wand of Kaloth. Not sure what that does. Oh, look. Is that a High Elf only item? No, it's not. It's just got a High Elf looking symbol on it. So the Amulet of Fire will take a look and see what that does here in a moment. So let's take a look at these real quick. Dispel Magic Scroll. It does what it says. It basically is a one-use only item. Dispels a spell. Relic Sword. Looks like it adds +1 to weapon skill. Now, that might be useful maybe for the Empire General to put him on par with some Dark Elf weapons, higher weapon skill. Chalice of Sorcery. Let's see. Looks like a wizard can drink from it and take an extra card from the Winds of Magic deck. But if he rolls a d6 roll of 1, he suffers a wound with no armor save. And then the Skull Wand of Kaloth. Interesting. Wielded like a mace in close combat. If he hits his enemy, the wand will attempt to drain his soul. Oh, delightful. The victim must test against his leadership to resist the wand's magic. If he fails, his soul is sucked from his body, and he's killed outright. No armor saving throws allowed. Well, that sounds interesting. And that's pretty cool. So our Jade Wizard here is going to be rolling in with some serious equipment. Let's take a look here and take a look at what the Ambushers have. So first up for our Ambushers, the Banner of Arcane Protection. Looks like it gives a unit a Dispel on a 4+. And that's pretty cool. It'll probably be useful. Gold Sigil Sword, Initiative 10. Well, not like the Dark Elves need a high initiative, but that could be really useful for our Night Goblin big boss. Blade of Leaping Copper, as predicted, +1 attack. I remember that one. And then the Amulet of Fire. Dispel spells cast against the wearer or unit on a d6 roll of 4+. So it looks like some strong anti-magic is going to be on the side of the Ambushers, while our Jade Wizard is going to be all tooled up with some cool stuff. So we're going to see how that plays out. Nothing super crazy, super powerful in there, which is fine by me. It's always kind of interesting to see when it does, but today looks pretty tame on both sides. It's part of the fun of the dangerous, free-thinking, radical ideas. You never know what you're going to get, and you have a good time with whatever the deck gods decide to give you that particular day. So we're going to go ahead and see what spells our Goblin Shaman is going to get today. He's a level 2, so he's going to get 2. There we go. Let's take a look at these. First one, here we go. So that looks like the unit gains +1 toughness and always hits first in combat, even if charged. Well, that's going to be useful, especially on some goblins. Toughen them up. And then this one is the Crunch. The almighty foot of the orc god Gork stomps down to squish the enemy into splutchy pancakes. Delightful. Looks like they get an area template to put down. And, oh, wow, anybody caught under it is going to suffer a strength down hit. Well, that could really screw up the Empire Knight's day by just crushing that armor. So 2 really good spells there for our Night Goblin Shaman. And then I'm going to have to roll to see what our Jade Wizard's going to get, because unfortunately, this is one thing that I don't like about 5th edition is they took away the actual spell cards for the Colleges of Magic. So you got to roll those from the back of the book. Let's go ahead and do that here and see what we get. So there's 10 spells possible here in the Jade College. We'll roll 2d10 and see what numbers we get. Looks like a 7 and a 3. So spell number 3 is the Emerald Pool. It allows the wizard to basically melt into the ground and reappear anywhere within 24 inches of position, which is if he comes into contact with an enemy model, he counts as charging in the first turn of close combat. So that could be useful given that his magic items are kind of close combat oriented anyway. And then let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7. The other one he got was Cloak of Dane. So that basically is a protection spell, gives him the ability to negate wounds, which again is probably more useful given the magic items that he got in this particular game, given that we're probably going to be wanting him to get into close combat. So it's good that it worked out that way. So we've got a Jade Wizard here who's going to be gearing up for some close quarters combat with the enemy, and then we've got a Night Goblin Shaman over there who's going to be trying to stomp people with the Foot of Gork and buff up his boys to get into close combat. So I kind of like that dichotomy there. It should make for a pretty good game, hopefully. So let's go ahead and dive into turn 1 and see what happens. So we're going to recap the turn 1 Dark Elf and Goblin moves for you. The Wolf Riders moved around on the flank. The Trolls naturally failed their stupidity test and rolled a 5, which means they stood there and do nothing. Both Goblin units have marched up the river, looking to close with the foe over there. Most of the Squig Hoppers hopped forward. This one guy hopped back here onto a rock. I couldn't get him to stand up, so I decided to just lay him down, where he hopped backwards to. The Night Goblin Archers moved up right behind him. The Dark Elf Scouts moved up. Going to be looking to take some shots down there in the shooting phase. And then the Corsairs, Hydra, and Cold Ones just made a mad dash towards their enemies. So our Dark Elf Scouts here are going to be firing downrange at those Illyrian Reavers. It's going to be -3 to hit, 1 from moving, another 1 from going over half range, and another -1 from firing a double volley with their repeater crossbows. Scouts are ballistic skill 5, which means they hit on a base 2+, so 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Seeing what we get here. And I see 1 hit. Second volley here coming up. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the second volley, 1 on the first. That brings us to 5 total hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3 means 4 to wound. And that is 4 out of 5 doing wounds. The Reavers have light armor and they're mounted, so they're going to have a save of 5 up on 4 hits. Reavers are going to need to see a lucky roll here. Let's see what they can do. And none of them, folks. That is almost the unit wiped. Only the champion is going to still be around. That is some serious damage. That was just a devastating volley on the Reavers. The Reavers are such good troops, but they're so lightly armored that they're extremely vulnerable. And Dark Elves just open up with a lethal volley on them. So that's all the shooting there is in turn 1 for the Dark Elf Goblin Alliance here. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the panic check for the lone champion Reaver who just survived all his friends getting wiped out. And he's cool, calm, and collected. He's going to stick around. We'll see if he's able to extract a little bit of vengeance on his foe in the turns to come. So let's walk you through Empire movement on turn 1. The gun crew turned around. They can't fire on turn 1. The militia turned around and moved up slightly to face the oncoming enemy. The Empire Knights, led by the general and accompanied by the wizard, have wheeled and marched around the gun. The handgunners spread out along the front of the bridge, and the halflings are trying to shuffle by behind them. The spearmen moved across the bridge and turned to face the enemy. The pistoliers moved up slightly and added subtracted a rank so they could fill out their formation. The elf reaver champion moved up alongside them. The sword masters reformed. The archers wheeled and are ready to fire. The spearmen reformed. The bolt thrower turned around. And these shadow warriors critically have moved up here to try and force the Dark Elf Cold Ones to charge them. And the High Elf hero here has rode round the flank in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, those Shadow Warriors will hold out in a round of combat next turn, and he'll be able to charge those Cold Ones on the flank. The only High Elf or Empire shooting this turn is actually going to be from the Reaver Champion. He is going to try and fire into those Squig Hoppers. He moved, and he's shooting at over half range, so he will need a 4-up to hit. He does hit. Strength 3 on the bow to toughness 3 on the Squig Hopper. Needs a 4 or better. And it wounds. And our little squig gets a 6-up armor save, which he fails, so 1 Squig Hopper will go down. Now it is the Empire Magic phase, however, since both the Jade Wizard's spells are defensive in nature, one allows him to essentially move and within 24 inches, and the other one basically allows him to soak wounds. There's really nothing I'm going to have him do this turn. The movement one's intriguing, but I definitely don't want the wizard hopping off alone to go fight a unit. Even with his magic items, I don't think he'll survive that. And the wound soak is helpful, but again, I'll probably use it in the context of him fighting alongside his unit rather than fighting as an independent character somewhere else on the board. But we'll see. Sometimes situations crop up and you realize, oh, that spell would be perfect for it. So we'll see what the game is in store. But right now, the Jade Wizard's just going to ride along and look into getting into combat here with his knightly bodyguard. So start of Dark Elf turn 2 here, and here we are encountering for the first time Dark Elf obedience test. Now they all passed last turn, however this turn the scouts failed. And so what happens when Dark Elves fail their obedience test, this only applies when they're fighting High Elves because they hate them so much that they might just break away and do their own thing. And so when they fail, they have to charge the nearest High Elf unit if there's one in range. Here there's not. However, if there's no one not in range, then they have to march at full speed in the direction of the closest, which is going to be that Reaver. So these scouts aren't going to be shooting this turn. They're so angry that that one Reaver survived that they're just going to be running towards him this turn. So there won't be any shooting from them. So during our movement phase, one of our squigs went rogue and decided to hop on top of a Dark Elf scout. He was apparently so hungry he just couldn't wait to get to enemy lines. So I looked at the rules, and looks like the squig makes an automatic attack here on the Dark Elf. The squig's strength 5, so it'll wound on a 2+. And it does wound, and that will, the strength 5 will negate any armor the scout has, so the scout is gone. Devoured by a hungry squig. So then the squig is going to bounce off again immediately, is what the rule book, or the Orc and Goblin book says it does. So we're going to nominate him in the direction of that High Elf Reaver champion and see how far he goes. Let's go ahead and roll. And 8 inches. And he lands just clear of the High Elf Reaver champion. That horse is probably quite startled by what just landed behind him, but he is clear. I did check it. It's close, but he does just barely miss him. So let's give you a recap of where everything ended up at the end of the movement for Dark Elves and Goblins on turn 2. The Wolf Riders ran right around the side of those Imperial Knights. I thought about charging them head on in a suicide charge, but then thought the wiser of it, especially because our friendly trolls here passed their stupidity test and started marching towards the front of that armored column. So that's probably a better way to do it. Meanwhile, our Night Goblins and regular Goblins continue to rush up towards the bridge here. Our Squig Hoppers continue to hop. As mentioned before, our Dark Elf Scouts decided in a rage to charge that Lone Reaver Survivor. The Night Goblins down here with their Shaman just reformed into a single line. The Corsairs marched up. In a little change of pace, the Cold One Knights decided that they didn't want to charge the Shadow Warriors because the Shadow Warriors have hatred. So if by chance somehow they didn't kill them all, they'd be stuck there and potentially vulnerable. So, crafty Dark Elves that they are, they decided to charge the Spearman while the Hydra got sent to go feast on some Shadow Warriors. So that's where all the movement is on turn 2 for Goblins and Dark Elves. And we'll check back in here in a second for the close combat phase. So our friendly Hydra here has 5 attacks. He's going to put 2 into the High Elf Champion who's there with the unit and 3 into the regular Shadow Warriors. He's weapon skill 4, which means he's going to need a 4 to hit across the board. And looks like 1 hit on the rank and file and 2 on the champion. So rolling to wound against the champion. Our Hydra is strength 5, the champion's toughness 3, so that's going to be a 2 or better. And one of them is enough to get through, and the strength of 5 will negate the champion's armor save. So fare thee well, High Elf Champion. We've also got 1 wound to resolve against the rank and file here. Again, it's going to be 2+. And another one of the Hydra heads just picks up one of these Shadow Warriors and rips him apart. So there is 1 Shadow Warrior left who can fight back in the front rank. He hits on 4s. He does hit. Can he wound our great Hydra? The Hydra is toughness 6. The Shadow Warrior is strength 3. He's going to need a 6 to do it. Can he rise to the occasion and place the sword right between the scales? Oh, so close, but he cannot do so. So that is 2 wounds suffered by our noble High Elf Shadow Warriors. So that's going to bring their leadership down from 8 to 6. So they're going to need a 6 or under to stick around and face this mighty beast. And they do it. They're nothing if not brave. So the Shadow Warriors will stick around with this Hydra for 1 more turn at least. Moving on to our next combat, we have the Dark Elf General and his Cold One Knights against the High Elf Spearman. The High Elf Champion is going to muster his courage and issue a challenge to the Dark Elf General. Now, we know the Dark Elf General cannot refuse. Even if he could, he's too proud and hateful to decline the opportunity to face a High Elf Champion in single combat. So he will strike first. He has 4 attacks, and with a higher weapon skill, he will be hitting on 3s. Let's see what he does. 2 of them hit. Let's see if he wounds. Now he does have a lance, so he is hitting this round of combat on the charge with strength 5, which means he'll wound our champion on a 2+. And those are 2 wounds, and with the armor save modifier from that strength, there's going to be no armor save, so our champion is dead. However, the Cold One is also entitled to attack him to see if he gets overkill. So 2 attacks from the Cold One hitting on 4s. 1 gets through. Strength 4 to toughness 3, 3 or better. It does wound, and our High Elf will have a chance to save that on a modified 5-up. Which he doesn't get. So it's going to be +3 overkill on the challenge there. With our High Elf hero slain, it's time for the rest of the Cold One Knights to do their dirty deeds. So there's 5 knights, 5 attacks. Their weapon skill 5 to the spearman's weapon skill 4, hitting on 3s. And that looks like 4 hits. With the lances, they are strength 5 this turn to toughness 3, so they will wound the High Elf Spearman on 2s. And that's 4 wounds. Our High Elves will have a modified armor save of 6 up. So let's see if they get lucky here. 4 armor saves, needing a 6. And look at that. Aisha is with them. 3 out of the 4 are saved. What a day for the High Elves. But lest I speak too soon, we've still got some hungry cold ones that want to get in on this action. We've got 5 cold ones with 2 attacks each. They're going to hit on 4s. And I see 4 hits in there. Strength 4 to toughness 3 will wound on a 3 or better. And that's 4 wounds. Can the High Elves summon Aisha again to protect them? This time the High Elves will have a modified save of 5 or better on 4 wounds. Let's see if they can do it again. 2 out of 4 ain't bad. 2 out of 4 is, we'll take that all day. So 2 High Elves, though, will fall to the cold ones. So one of the cool things about High Elves in 5th edition is their spearmen defend in 3 ranks when they get charged. So that is, by my count, going to leave them with 10 attacks back here on the Cold One Knights. Weapon skill 4 to weapon skill 5 is going to hit on 4s or better. Let's see if they've got some resolve. And I count 2 4 hits. 4 hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3 on the Cold One Knights. Going to need 4s to wound. And none of them wound. Ugh, that was not good. So figuring out the combat results here, the Dark Elves caused 4 casualties. They have a banner. And they get 2 from the overkill. The High Elves have 3 ranks. And they have the banner of Defiance, which doubles the rank bonus. So their rank bonus will count as 6 because of their banner of Defiance. So let's see. It's 7-6 in favor of the Dark Elves. So that will be a -1 to the High Elf leadership of 8. So High Elves will need a 7 or less to stick around. Let's see if they can do it. An 8. Oh my. So there's one thing that could possibly save them here. So the High Elves in 5th edition have Elven Enmity against the Dark Elves, which gives them a resolve, allowing them to reroll break or psychology tests as long as the Army General or Army Standard Bearer remains on the battlefield and is not fleeing. So, get one more bite at the apple here, guys. Let's see if you can stick around on a 7 or less. And there it is, just barely, just by the skin of their teeth. These High Elves decide they're going to stick around. They're going to stick around. A lot of drama in that combat, but that's what we like to see here in the world of Warhammer. So that is how Dark Elf and Goblin turn 2 will end, with the Elves having held firm, if only barely, for the moment. Elven Spearmen stick around, stopping the Dark Elf Cold Ones in their tracks, at least for the moment. And the Shadow Warriors having somehow managed not to run against this terrifying beast. Perhaps I spoke too soon. I forgot about the winds of magic. 6. Let's deal them out. See what we get. Here we go. Take a peek. 3 power. That means we can try and cast the Crunch once again. So our Goblin Shaman has decided he's going to try and call down the Foot of Gork down upon the High Elf Swordmasters because they're elves and elves scare him and make him feel a little funny. So he's going to try and smite them with the Foot of Gork. Let's see, what does the Empire have in their hand? Power, and a mental duel. So, our Jade Wizard over here senses something in the winds of magic. He senses Gork is coming down, and he engages in a mental duel with our Night Goblin Shaman here. So, Wizards are the same level, so he will need a 4-up to make the Dispel work. However, he does have the 2 power cards in there that he can buff. So it's going to be a D6, and he's going to get a +2 on his roll from the power card boost. 3 + 2 is a 5. Dispel works. So just like that, the Foot of Gork comes back. At least for a turn. We'll see what will happen in the next Goblin Magic phase. So here's the start of High Elf and Empire turn 2. Showing you where everything is. And we'll check back in a moment. I'll show you where everything ends up. So here you can see everything, how everything came up. We've got the High Elf General on Griffin coming down from flying high to charge into the flank of the Cold Ones there. Our High Elf hero has charged bravely into the flank of those Corsairs, while the Swordmasters have charged in from the front. And speaking of charges, our valiant Pistoliers have charged into the advancing scouts, while our Illyrian Reaver hero has taken upon himself to charge a squig. Our Spearmen have reformed into a fighting formation out of marching column. Our Knights have charged the Trolls, though they are exposed in their rear. And the Halflings have turned on the bridge to face the Wolf Riders. I decided I'm going to just have them turn about to make a shot into the Wolf Riders here. I am going to treat it as them being on a hill. So those 2 guys at the bottom who are on the lower steps still are going to be able to fire, as well as the first 3 in that rank over there. We'll see if they'll be able to knock off a Wolf Rider or 2 in the upcoming shooting phase. So that's movement, a lot of action this turn, a lot of charges coming in, and we'll move into shooting and see what happens. So as I mentioned, our first round of shooting is going to come from the Halflings. We've got 5 bowmen who have turned themselves and are able to shoot at the Wolf Riders. They did move, and they are over half range, so it's going to take them up to a 5+ to hit. Let's see if our Halfling Bowmen have it in them. And that's 2 hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3. It's going to be 4+ to wound. And that's 2 wounds on our Wolf Riders. They do have shields, and they are mounted, so they're going to get 2 5-up saves. Let's see if the arrows stay true. Oh, look at that, a 5 and a 6. The Goblins get their shields up. The volley from the Halflings lands in with a thud. And the Goblin Wolf Riders are unscathed. Next up is the cannon. Now, by scenario rules, the cannon can only shoot on a 4+ on turn 2. So let's see if this crew has a gun primed and ready to fire. Not yet. So they still got stuff they're mucking around with over there. They're not going to be able to get the shot off. So the next up to shoot here are going to be our Imperial handgunners up there. Now you may remember them from last battle. They were really finding their mark with their volleys. I've put them in a single rank this game. So they're all going to be able to shoot this round, but they're going to spend next round reloading. So they are going to get that chance to get off 9 shots. Let's see if their accuracy holds true. Well, let's see. They are within half. So let's see. That looks like 4 out of 9. Not great, but it's about average. So let's see. 4 hits at strength 4 are going to be wounding on 3s. Oh, bad show. Bad show. Only 1 gets through. That's only going to be 1 casualty there on the goblins from that whole volley and 9 handgunners. Disappointing. So last but not least, we do have 4 high elven bowmen that can fire into the night goblin archers. They're over half range, so they're going to hit on 4s. Look at that. 3 hits. Let's see if they can show those Imperial handgunners how it's done. Wounding on 4s. No, not really. They aren't going to show anybody anything. So that's one casualty. So as we move into the close combat phase here, the Empire and High Elves certainly hope that they will have a little bit better luck at close quarters than they've had at range today. So first up, we're going to have the Empire Knights, led by the General, as well as the Jade Wizard, charging into the gang of river trolls here. Now, river trolls came out of the river. They're slippery, they're wet, they're covered in muck and fish guts and all sorts of nasty things. So they're -1 to hit. So first up is going to be our Empire General charging in with the lance. Normally he hit on 3s, but these river trolls, as I said, they're slippery. So he's going to hit on 4s. And that's only 1 hit. So let's take a look. So strength 6 with the lance on the charge against toughness 4 is going to be a 2 or better to cause a wound. It doesn't even pierce. Look at that, folks. Empire General just rendered totally useless by these slippery river trolls. So do recall here that our Jade Wizard has the Skull Wand of Kaloth, which means that if he hits, the target has to take a leadership test, and if he fails it, then his soul is sucked from his body and he is killed outright. No armor saving throws allowed. So our Wizard Champion is only Weapon Skill 3, which is the same as the Trolls, which means he'd normally hit on 4, but because they're River Trolls, he's going to hit on a 5. Let's see if he can do it. He's only got 1 attack. And close, but no cigar. So that leaves our last hope for doing any damage at all to the champion there on the end in the black armor. He's got 2 attacks. Normally he would hit on 3s, but again, they're slippery river trolls, so he's going to need 4s to hit. And that's 2 hits with the modified strength on the lance. That's strength 6 on the charge to toughness 4. He needs 2s to wound. Only 1 gets through. All right, which the trolls are going to be able to attempt to regenerate there at the end of the round. And lest I spoke too soon, we do have 3 brave war horses coming in, hooves kicking in the air. We'll see if they can show their riders how to fight. So 3 war horses hitting on 5. 1 hit, and it needs a 5 or better to wound. Nope, no good. So each troll has 3 attacks. The troll on the far right is going to attack the Jade Wizard. Weapon skill 3, hitting on 4s. That's 2 hits. The Wizard Champion is toughness 4, so he will be wounding on 3s. That's 2 wounds, and those are going to negate our wizard's save because he only has a 5-up save from being mounted and being on a warhorse with barding. So that is goodbye, Jade Wizard. You're now a troll's lunch. Our next troll is going to hack at the Empire General, hitting on 4s. That's 1 hit, wounding on 3s. And he does wound with a 3. The Empire General has a 2-up save that will get modified by -2 to a 4 better. So the Empire General gets his shield up and staves off the attack from the troll. Last troll is going to put his attacks into the champion. That's the only one he's in base contact with. So he's going to go 3 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hits, wounding on 2s. He does wound, and our brave knightly champion has a save modified up to a 4 better. Come on, champion, you can do it. And there he does. Gets his shield up in time as well. Staves off the blow from a hungry troll. So now that combat is over, the troll gets to attempt to regenerate. On a 4 better, the wound comes back. There you go, folks. No wound at all. So let's see. The trolls did 2 wounds, killing the Jade Wizard. The Empire has a standard, so the Empire is actually going to lose the combat by 1. Testing off the General's leadership of 9, reducing by 1. Need an 8 or lower to stay. And they're cool. They're sticking around. They're going to hack it out with these trolls. So that, my friends, is why the saying exists, not to put your wizards in close combat, even when they've got cool close combat-y magic items. They tend to die. And now this is seriously to the Empire's detriment because they're not going to have any wizard to help them stave off future dispels from our Night Goblin Shaman. So we could be seeing some more Foot of Gork here in some upcoming turns. Now moving across the river here, we have the Reaver Champion fighting against the Squighopper. He's got 2 attacks hitting on 3s. Those both hit, and he's going to wound on 3s because he's strength 4. And that's 2 wounds, and that will strength 4 will negate his armor save of a 6-up, so that Squighopper is deceased. And coming over here, we have the Pistoliers charging into the Scouts. We have a champion and 4 riders. So I'm going to put the champion's 2 attacks on black dice, and the 4 riders will be on white dice. Coming in, everybody's going to need a 4 to hit. And that looks like only the champion has done his job there. So 2 strength 4 attacks coming in from the champion, wounding on 3s. That 1 wounds, and 1 Dark Elf Scout will drop. Now for their pistol attacks, everybody gets a pistol attack. So the pistol shots work out at the weapon skill, but they are going to be strength 4. So hitting on 4s, that's 2 hits, and then wounding on 3s. Strength 4 to toughness 3. That's 1 wound, and it'll negate the armor save, so another scout falls. And for those who are wondering why I didn't roll the horses, it's because the writers of the Empire Army book decided that the Pistoliers were not entitled to brave war horses. They were only entitled to horses, which don't get an attack. So we have 3 Dark Elf Scouts fighting back. They're going to hit on 3s because of their superior weapon skill. They all hit. Strength 3 to toughness 3, wounding on 4s. That's 1 wound. And our brave Pistoliers have a armor save of 5 up. Let's see if they do it. And they do it with a 6. So Dark Elf Scouts lose the combat by 2, so it's going to reduce their leadership from 8 to 6, needing a 6 or less to stay. And look at that. They ain't going anywhere. Now coming over to our right, we have the brave sword masters of Hoeth crashing in against the Dark Elf Corsairs and an elven hero riding into their flank. Let's do the hero first and see what happens. 3 attacks at weapon skill 6 is going to hit on 3 or better. And it looks like 1 hit. He's just coming in with a sword, so strength 4, toughness 3 is a 3 or better. And it fails to wound. Did we call him a hero? Maybe that's not the right name for him. Let's see if his elven steed can show him up. 1 attack, hitting on 4s. Nope, cut from the same cloth. Now the Swordmaster champion is going to issue a challenge out to the Dark Elf champion, who is too proud to refuse him. So the Swordmaster champion has 2 attacks at weapon skill 5. He's hitting on 4s. 1 does hit. He's strength 5 because of his 2-handed weapon, which he's allowed to wield at initiative because he is a Swordmaster of Hoeth. Look at that, though. He can't land the blow. Fails to wound. Now the Dark Elf's going to get to strike back. Our Dark Elf here has the Blade of Leaping Copper, so 3 attacks, hitting on 4s. And all fail to hit. So those 2 are locked in combat. Rolling for the 3 other Sword Masters of Hoeth here. Their weapon skill 5, so they're going to hit the Corsairs on 3s. Not a lot of sword masting going on here. 1 hit, 2 or better to wound. And it does wound, and we know they got those Sea Dragon cloaks. 5 or better, unmodifiable saves. There it is, folks. You knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. Those Sea Dragon cloaks, they're not intimidated by those big swords. So here is where the fury of the Corsairs comes to strike back. We have 4 Corsairs in the front rank, and they all have 2 hand weapons. So it's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8 attacks, hitting on 4s. And looks like 4 hits, wounding on 4s. That's 3 wounds. High Elves have a save of 5 up from their heavy Ithalmar armor. They save 1, but 2 fall. So let's count up the combat res. The High Elves, for all their effort, did no wounds. They do have 1 banner, and they did have 1 rank at the start of the combat. The Dark Elves did 2 wounds, and they had 3 ranks at the start of the combat, and they have a standard. So that is 6 to 2, so it's going to be a difference of 4. So they are within 12 inches of the general over there on the right, so they can test off his leadership 10. 10 minus 4 is going to be 6, so you need to see a 6 or less here. That is an 8. Now they can re-roll with the Elven Enmity rule that we discussed last turn. Come on, Swordmasters. There they go. They're sticking around. Now let's go ahead and test the Elven Hero who's over there. Again, he's looking for 6 or less because he's testing off the General's leadership. Another 8. We get to re-roll. Come on, Elf. Live up to your name. It says you're a hero. Be the hero. And no, he's not. Yeah, he's taken off. He's had enough of this. So our Elven hero is going to run 3d6. And looks like he'll be heading 12 inches towards the table edge. Now we have the fight with the Hydra. The Shadow Warriors have higher initiative, so they're going to get their 3 attacks in. Weapon skill 4 to weapon skill 4, hitting on 4s. 1 hits. Strength 3 to Toughness 6, needing a 6 up. Can you do it, brave Shadow Warrior? Oh, he did! Look at that! Good show, Shadow Warrior. However, the Hydra does get a say. He's got a 5 up scaly skin armor save. So let's see if he can deflect the blow with his scaly skin. Nope, he doesn't. So, oh boy, Shadow Warrior lands a wound. Now the Hydra gets to fight back. He has 5 attacks, hitting on 4s. And that looks like 3 hits. Wounding on 2s. And that's 2 wounds. And the strength of the Hydra is enough to cancel out any armor save that the Shadow Warriors have. So 2 Shadow Warriors will fall. So our Shadow Warriors here lose by 2. 2 off of 8 is 6 or less. Come on, Shadow Warriors, you can do it. No, they do not. So I'm not quite sure whether or not their Elven Enmity special rule applies here. So we're just going to dice off, because the Hydra is part of the Dark Elf army, but he's not a Dark Elf per se. So we're just going to dice off here on a 4 or better. We're going to say Elven Enmity applies, and 1 to 3 it doesn't. So 4 or better, it applies. So our Shadow Warriors are going to get 1 more chance. They need a 6 or less here. And the Elven Enmity reroll. Still not good enough, so they're going to take off. Shadow Warriors have had enough of this hungry beast. They're fleeing 2d6. 2! Oh, they're not going to get very far. And our hungry beast is hungry to pursue. And he's going to pursue 6 and run them down. Now for the last combat of the turn, the grand finale. We have our High Elf General on Griffin descending down onto the flank of the Cold Ones. And in order to protect his lads, the Dark Elf General is going to issue a challenge to the High Elf General. And they will have a meeting of the fates. Being of equal skill, the High Elf General will be hitting on 4s because he does have the charge. He is armed with a lance. So 4 attacks hitting on 4s. And that looks like 3 hit. And a modified strength 6 due to the lance. He will be wounding the toughness 4 Dark Elf General on 2+. And look at that, 2 1s. Only 1 is going to pierce the armor of the Dark Lord. And he will be getting a save. Modified to 5 up. Here we go. It doesn't save it. So 1 wound on the Dark Elf General. Next up will be the Griffin with 4 attacks. Hitting on 4s. And that's only 1 hit. Strength 6, toughness 4, wounding on 2s. And that does wound. Can our Dark Elf save it on a modified 5 up? He cannot. That'll be a 2nd wound on the Dark Lord. But importantly, he will survive to fight back. The Dark Elf Lord is going to throw all his attacks at the High Elf Lord, hitting on 4s with 4 attacks. Only 1 hits. Strength 4 to toughness 4. He will need a 4 or better. He does. And our High Elf Lord will have a modified save of 4 up. And he doesn't get it. So 1 wound. And last but not least, the Ravenous Cold One will also attempt to lay his claws and teeth into the High Elf Lord, hitting on 4s with 2 attacks. Both hit. Strength 4 to toughness 4, wounding on 4s. 1 does wound, and we will have a 4-up save for our High Elf Lord. Can he do it? He can. His armor Wards off the teeth of a ravenous cold one. Now we move into the combat between the cold ones and the spearmen. We have 5 cold one knights striking at initiative 7, hitting on 3s with their superior weapon skill. That looks like 4 hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3 will wound on 4s. And all 4 of them wound. Oh, 3 of the 4 wound. Our High Elf Spearmen have heavy Ithalmar armor and shield, so they will save on a 4 or better. Is Aisha with them? She is. 2 out of 3 are saved, but 1 High Elf falls to the blade of a cold one knight. And next up, defending in 3 ranks, we have 14 High Elven Spearmen. I'm going to have to roll this in 2 sets. Hitting on 4s, here's the first 10. Worked out perfectly. We have 6 hits. And the 4 other ones. And it looks like we have a total of 9 hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3, wounding on 4s. And it looks like we have 2, 4, 5 wounds. Now the Cold One Knights enjoy a 2+ armor save, but 5 wounds is a lot to ask of anyone. Let's see what they will do. And they save them all. Cain is with them. Last, but by no means least, we have the hungry, ravenous cold ones that are ready to sink their teeth into some delectable High Elven Spearmen. Coming in with 2 attacks each, we have 10 attacks, hitting on 4s. It's 5 hits. Strength 4 to toughness 3, wounding on 3s. That is 3. The strength of the cold ones modifies the High Elven armor to a 5-up save. Aisha, once again, are you with them? Oh, she's not. She's abandoned them, and 3 elves fall beneath the slavering mouth of the cold ones. So coming back to do combat resolution, the Dark Elf Lord inflicted 1 wound on his counterpart. He did, the Cold One Knights and Cold Ones did 4 wounds to the Elven Spearmen, and they have a banner. The High Elven Lord did 2 wounds to his counterpart. The Elven Spearmen did no wounds, but they had 2 ranks at the start of the combat, which is doubled from the Banner of Defiance for 4. And they have a banner. So the High Elves win this by the narrowest of margins, 7-6. But the Dark Elves will test on an unmodified leadership 10 because they hate their High Elven foe. Dark Elves, is your hatred powerful enough to keep you here fighting the enemy? Your ancient foe on 2d6. You need a 10 or less. They think nothing of it, and they're happy to continue. And now the High Elves must test for panic, because the Shadow Warriors, who were run down and destroyed on their flank by this hungry beast, cause panic tests. So first, we will roll for the Bolt Thrower crew, who is over there, close enough to smell the breath of the Hydra. On 2d6, testing off the General's leadership 10, and they're fine. Next, our elven spearmen who fought so bravely. Surely their courage will not falter at this hour. And it does not. And finally, the general himself, a model of resolve amidst the seething tides of battle. Surely his courage will not falter here in this moment. And it does not. So the High Elf and Dark Elf lines will remain locked in battle as we head into turn 3. So here we are at the start of Dark Elf and Goblin turn 3. And you can see they've got the Empire and the High Elves in a precarious position. The Wolf Riders in a position to either rear charge the Knights or charge the cannon crew. The militia are about to be charged by the Night Goblins in the front. The Scouts didn't break against the charge of the Pistoliers. The Corsairs remain locked in combat with the Swordmasters, as do the Dark Elf Cold One Knights with the Spearmen and the Griffin. And the Hydra there has just finished running down the Shadow Warriors and having a nice lunch. So that's where things are at the start of turn 3. We'll do some movement, we'll declare some charges, and we'll check right back in. So here we have movement on Dark Elf and Goblin turn 3. The Hydra has repositioned itself to let loose its breath weapon and potentially charge on another round. And then we had a wild and crazy round with the squigs. I've left the casualties there where you can see them. They decimated this unit of Pistoliers and then took out a couple of spearmen as well. And we've got one who's hopped up on the bridge. We've got another guy at the steps there. These squigs are just running wild, and it could not have come at a worse time for the High Elves and Empire. They also nicked that Illyrian Reaver as well. And then coming over here, we have the Night Goblin General and crew charging the Empire State Militia over there. And then we decided to have the Goblin Wolf Riders charge the Knights in the rear and make a little night sandwich there between them and the Trolls. And I don't think this is going to end well. If the dice go the rolls of Dark Elves and Goblins, this could be a devastating turn for the High Elf Empire Alliance. But we're going to see what happens. We're going to play it out, because that's what's wonderful about Warhammer. You never quite know how things will turn out. I've been surprised in all my games so far. We'll see if we get surprised again on this turn. Checking in on Dark Elf and Goblin shooting here, we have the Hydra unleashing a torrent of fire. Now, it is going to clip the High Elf General, and it's going to hit all of the High Elf Spearmen on a 4 or better. So this is 12 dice in all, and we will make the red dice count for the High Elf General. So many dice, I can barely get them all in my hand. Let's see. Well, the General is unscathed, but it looks like 2, 4, 6, 7 High Elf Spearmen are going to be tasting the flame. So one of the cool little things is that the strength of the Hydra's fire attack is linked directly to his wounds. So he starts with 7 wounds. So if he was at full wound allotment, he would be hitting with strength 7. However, he did take a wound from one of those Shadow Warriors. So he's actually, the strength of the fire is going to come in at strength 6, which is still very, very strong and easily strong enough to fry some elves. But that is one of those cool little 5th edition little touches that they put in there, those kind of little details that I just love about 5th edition. So anyway, let's get on with this wound roll. Here it comes. Oh, High Elves got lucky. Only 3 wound. And at strength 6, they are actually going to have a armor save because they're base 4 with the heavy Ithalmar armor and shield. So that'll modify... actually, I'm wrong. I'm terrible at math sometimes, most of the time. At strength 6, they're going to be -3. So I'm wrong. They don't get a save. So that's 2 of them that are going to fry. I spoke a little too soon. It's 3 of them that are going to fry. And that is important because there were 12 of them, and 3 out of 12 is exactly 25%, which means they're going to need to take a panic test at the end of the shooting phase. Next up in the shooting phase, we have those common goblin archers, and they are going to lay down a volley on those Empire Spearmen across the river. Now, they did move, and they are shooting at over half range, so that is going to take them from a base of 4 to a 6 up to hit. They do have a boss in there, and he has a little bit better ballistic skill. He's going to roll the black dice, so he's hitting on 5. The white dice for the rest of them are going to need 6s. Let's roll it and see what we get. And that is 1 hit. Strength 3 to toughness 3 is a 4 up to wound. And they get it. And the Empire has light armor and shield. Gives them a 5 up save. Let's see what it can do. Couldn't get a shield up in time. So another Empire Spearman will fall. Next, I was going to have the Night Goblins here try and fire down at the Spearmen, but they only have short bows, and as you can see from our 18-inch marker, they are just shy of the target. So the volley of arrows lands at the feet of the Empire Spearmen, and for once, just once, they count themselves lucky. Now, coming back over here, we have a panic test to resolve at the end of the shooting phase for these Spearmen who got Hydra fried. They're going to test off the general's leadership of 10. Can they do it? Just barely. Just barely. They say, General, things are getting kind of hot over here. Could you lend a hand, maybe? But they are going to stick around. They're good, disciplined elven citizen soldiers. So moving into the close combat phase here on turn 3, we're going to start with the most exciting charge here. We've got the Goblin Wolf Riders crashing into the rear of the Empire Knights. And we've got 4 of them who are in base-to-base contact. We're going to start with the Riders themselves. 4 attacks, hitting on 4s. And I don't know if they've had a few too many madcap mushrooms or what, but all of them miss. Let's see if their wolves can do any better. And here come the wolves, hitting on 4s. Another whiff. 3 1s and a 2, since I don't think it's coming up clearly on the camera. Boy, at least, what can I say? The only thing I can say is that at least the High Elves and the Dark Elves aren't having the complete rubbish share of the luck here. At least it's coming up on both sides, which is all you can ask for. But wow, charge from the Goblin Wolf Riders and not a single hit between Riders and Wolves. Now it's time for those Empire Knights to strike back. Can they show them a lesson on how to use their weapons? 4 Empire Knights, 3 Empire Knights, hitting on 3s. And all hit. Can they wound? Strength 4 to toughness 3, needing 3s or better. And not so great. One manages a wound, and that will allow a 6-up saving throw for our Goblin Wolf Rider. Can he get his shield up in time? No, he doesn't. So 1 goblin will fall. Now to the front of the armored column as the general tries to steady his sword arm and land it on the trolls in the second round of combat. coming in with 4 attacks, and only hitting on 4s because they are trolls and they're still slimy and slippery and -1 to hit. So 4 attacks hitting on 4s from the Empire General. And it looks like 3 of the 4 come in. It'll be strength 4 to toughness 4. So another round of 4s. And that is 2. Next up is our knightly champion with 2 attacks hitting on 4s. Neither hit. And finally our knightly standard bearer with 1 attack hitting on 4s. He does hit. He'll need a 4 up to wound. Not strong enough today. And last but not least, our mighty warhorses. 3 attacks hitting on 4s. 2 of them hit. That's strength 3 to toughness 4. They'll need a 5 or better. And 1 of them comes in. That is enough to put a 3rd wound on a troll. Now they will get a regeneration at the end of the round. So 2 trolls are upright and able to strike back at the moment. Together they have 6 attacks hitting on 4s. And oh my, every single one of them hits. Take a look at that, folks. I put all the dice back for you. What a beautiful roll. Those trolls are mad. Mad that their buddy got knocked down by a warhorse. And they are about to take their revenge. So the trolls are strength 5 to the knight's toughness 3. That is 6 rolls to wound, needing a 2 or better. And look at that, folks. Once again, every single dice has come up money for the trolls. So that is 6 armor saves that are going to be needed here for our proud noble knights. Strength 5, it's going to be -2. So that will take their 2+ up to a 4. The Empire Knights are going to need to call upon Sigmar himself to make these and have a chance at winning the combat. Sigmar, are you with them? Not so much. That is going to be 4 knights falling before these angry, hungry river trolls. That, my friends, is some serious carnage, and to add insult to injury, the troll gets to roll to regenerate. If he hits even one of these on a 4+, he's going to come back up. And look at that, folks. The luck of the trolls continue. Every single one of his wounds is regenerated, which by the army book states that it doesn't count for combat resolution. So let's do some combat res. So the goblins have a rear attack for +2. The trolls inflicted 4 wounds. The Empire don't get any of their wounds counted because they were all regenerated, but they do have a standard bearer. So 6 minus 1 is 5. So the Empire General's leadership of 9, we take 5 off of it. He's going to need a 4 or better to stick around. Can you do it? Can you lead your men in this moment when they need you most to rally against these trolls? Oh my, look at that, folks. Snake eyes. The general is nothing if not brave, and his men seem determined to go down with the ship here on the left flank against these trolls. Well, wow. It will be hard to follow in the footsteps of such a dramatic combat and display of courage, the rage of the trolls with the steely nerves of the Empire General. But follow it we must. And so we move on here to the Night Goblins, led by their big boss, charging into the Empire State Militia here on the banks of the river. So charging, our goblins will strike first. We'll roll the big boss first with 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. And the trend of bad rolls for leaders continues. Only 1 hit. He's strength 4 to toughness 3, wounding on 3s. He does wound, and that will cancel out the light armor save of the militia, felling 1. Next up, we have the Goblin Battle Standard Bearer with 2 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hit, strength 4 to toughness 3. He will need a 3 to wound. He does, and once again, another Empire militiaman falls beneath a goblin sword. And lastly, we have 3 night goblins with their sharpened, pointy sticks. Hitting on 4s, there's 1. Strength 3 to toughness 3, needing a 4 to wound. And he fails to wound. So the Empire's lost 2 men from their front rank, 2 remain. They have 2 hand weapons each, granting them a total of 4 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hit, strength 3 to toughness 3, needing a 4 or better to wound. And he fails to do so. Time for a little combat res. So the goblins did 2 wounds. They have 2 standards, the unit standard and the battle standard bearer. They have 3 ranks. The Empire militia have 2 ranks. So the goblins are going to win by 5. Sound familiar, folks? We just saw that with the knights. And they are going to need another knightly display of courage in order to stick around. They are within 12 of the general's leadership. Perhaps it will rub off on them. They are going to need a 5, 4, or less on 2d6. No, these commoners can't be counted on to display the medal of the knightly orders. No, that would be too much. And if you've watched any of my battle reports by now, you know that the Empire State Militia can be counted on for only one thing, and that is to run at the surest sign of danger. And here, once again, folks, you will be treated to their foot race. Moving over here, we have the last of the Pistoliers facing the Dark Elf Scouts. The Dark Elf Scouts, being quick and deadly, are going to strike first. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s. 2 hits, strength 4 to toughness 4. They will wound on 4s. 1 wound. The Pistoliers have an armor save of 5 up. Let's see if their armor is strong enough to stave off that cleaver. No, it's not. Yet another Pistolier is torn asunder. The last Pistolier firing with his pistol, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s. What can I say? There's nothing to say. Pistol at point blank range that can't wound. Clearly the man needs to get his powder checked. He also has his hand weapon attack, hitting on 4s, and he misses. So our last Pistolier will lose the combat by 1. He will need to take a break test at leadership 6 or less on 2d6. And with a 6, he stays. The last of the brave Pistoliers will fight on, at least for another round. We move on now to the combat between the Corsairs and the Swordmasters of Hoeth. The challenge between the Dark Elf champion and the High Elf champion continues. Since both champions have initiative 7, By rule, the side which won the combat last goes first, which would be our Dark Elf. So our Dark Elf has 3 attacks. He is equally skilled to his High Elf counterpart, so he will need 4s to hit. 2 hits, and he's hitting with Strength 4 to Toughness 3, needing 3s to wound. 1 wounds, and our High Elf champion will need a 6 here. He has the Heavy Ithilmar armor, which grants him a 5 base, but it's modified up to a 6 from the strength of his attacker. Can you do it, brave High Elf champion? So very, very close. But alas, not close enough. And our High Elf champion will fall. It is now up to the sword masters in the ranks to redeem him. There are 3 able to fight, hitting on 3s. 2 hits, wounding on 2s. 1 wound. And of course, you know, the Sea Dragon cloaks. We all know what they're going to do. Of course, because I said ahead of time, this time, it didn't come up a 5 or a 6. So 1 Corsair falls to the 2-handed sword of the Swordmaster. Once again, the fury of the Corsairs will be unleashed. 6 attacks hitting on 4s. 2 hit, needing 4s to wound. Both wound, and the High Elves will need a 5 or better to stave off the wounds. 1 does, the other falls beneath the Corsair's axe. So let's do a little combat res, shall we? The High Elves have 1 banner and inflicted 1 casualty. The Dark Elves have a banner. They had 3 ranks at the start of this, and they inflicted 2 casualties. That is 6-2 in the Dark Elves' favor. That's going to be -4. Thankfully for the Swordmasters, they're within 12 of the General, meaning they can test off his leadership 10. So they will need a 6 or less to stick around. And they do it. They're nothing if not brave. And so we come at the end of the round to the combat we've all been waiting for. The Dark Elf Lord against his High Elf counterpart. The battle they were fated to make continues. Since the Dark Elves won the last round of combat, the Dark Elf Lord is entitled to strike first. He will direct all his attacks into the High Elven Lord. 4 attacks, needing 4s to hit. 2 hits, strength 4 to toughness 4, needing 4s to wound. And neither one can do it. Striking back next will be the High Elven Lord with 4 attacks of his own, hitting on 4s. 1 lands. Is it strong enough? Needing a 4 or better. It's not. So the High Elf Lord flails back in vain, trying to wound the Dark Elven Lord. But perhaps his mighty beast might yet come to his aid. With 4 attacks of his own, hitting on 4s. 2, needing 2 or better to wound at strength 6. 1 lands. Can the Dark Elf save? He's going to need a 5 or better to stave off death at the hands of this hungry griffin. And he does it. Look at that, folks. The Dark Elf armor holds true, and the claws grip, but they cannot penetrate to his black, dark heart. Last but by no means least, there's an angry cold one who wants to rip that High Elven Lord from his saddle and feast on his innards. 2 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hits, strength 4 to toughness 4, needing a 4. And that, friends, is a truly cocked dice. It landed between 2 Cold One bases, and it is not clear to me which side it is, so I will re-roll, needing a 4. There it is. Can the High Elf Lord's armor stave off the Cold One's claws and teeth? He will need a 4 or better. And he fails, so he takes a second wound. Now both Elven Lords are 1 wound away from death, and it seems that their struggle is poised to continue. However, our Elven Lord will have to take a break test at the end of the round because he did lose by 1. Needing a 9 or lower to stay. Can he do it? He does. So our 2 Elven Lords seem poised to continue their fight into turn 4. And I almost forgot. The rest of the Cold One Knights are fighting the Spearman. Cold One Knights strike first with higher initiative, hitting on 3s. 3 hits, wounding on 4s. 1 wounds, 4 up armor save. Failed. Yet another brave High Elven Spearman is torn asunder. The 8th Spearmen left now make their attacks. Can these citizen soldiers of Ulthuan rise to the moment and fell these ferocious Cold One Knights? 3 hit, needing 4s to wound. All 3 landed true. The Dark Elves will have a 2-up armor save. The High Elves are going to need some luck, some serious luck. But perhaps Aisha is here with them. Alas, their hopes were in vain, and their spear points bounce off the shields and chainmail armor of the Cold One Knights. And as the eyes of the spearmen descend from the knights above to the cold ones below, they see their yellow eyes and slavering mouths, and the cold ones strike. Landing 4 hits, wounding on 3s. 2 wounds. The elves will need 5s or better to stave them off. And look at that. Aisha, who they thought deserted them, stays with them still to protect them from these cold-blooded monstrosities. The combat, perhaps fittingly, ends in a draw, and the great saga playing out at the end of the elven line will continue for at least 1 more turn. But let us not end on such a somber note. Instead, let us laugh as the Empire militia turn to flee, and we shall see how far they go. A mighty 10. They're nothing if not quick when running away from the foe. And our goblin friends will give chase. Unable to catch them, they will pursue directly into those halflings, where they will meet in turn 4. And lest I forget, the magic phase. Rolling for the winds of magic. 11. The winds are blowing strongly today, and the goblin shaman is treated to 5 power cards. That's going to allow him to cast the Crunch. Paying 3 power, the Shaman is going to attempt to crunch on the Spearman. However, what do the Empire have? 2 power cards, a Mental Duel, a Dispel, and a Rebound. So the Empire player will use the Rebound with 2 power. Now, because their wizard is dead, the Goblin Shaman has a higher level, so he will be at a -1. But with the 2 power, that will boost him to a +1. However, our Goblin can then reinforce with 1, 2 additional power, taking him from a +1 back down to a -1. So, after all that math, the Empire player will need a 5 or better to stop the crunch. And he fails. Time to get crunched. Putting the crunch over the unit, I think I can get 15 of them. Now, per the spell card, we need to roll the scatter dice to see if it lands on target. And it's going back towards us. D6 inches, 2 inches. So that is still going to drop the front rank, or hit the front rank, I should say, including the champion. We will roll his Look Out, Sir roll. He's looked out, gets pushed out of the way by one of his brave comrades. So that is 5 strength, 10 hits, wounding on 2s, and 4. So almost the entire front rank goes down in a big crunch. And those Empire Spearmen now know what it feels like to be an ant when you're stepped on by a human. And that is how Dark Elf and Goblin Turn 3 ends, with bad omens for the Empire and High Elves. The Elves barely holding on their flank, their hero running, the Pistoliers reduced to their final brave lad, the Squig Hoppers run amok, the Spearmen crunched, the Halflings now charged in the flank, the militia fleeing as they always do, and what's left of the brave, noble knights appear likely to be smashed to bits next turn by some angry river trolls. We'll see what comes next. Here we are on Empire and High Elf Turn 3. You can see things are not going very well for them. The Empire Knights are in a Troll and Goblin sandwich over here. The Halflings were just charged by the Night Goblins. The militia are fleeing. The Spearmen have Squig Hoppers hopping all over the place. The Pistoliers were just devoured by the Squig Hoppers, almost to a man. And yeah, we've got a High Elf hero fleeing. We've got the Corsairs slowly wearing down the Swordmasters of Hoeth, and the epic battle continues over here on the flank between a handful of spearmen and the High Elf General against these Cold One Knights that just will not die. Meanwhile, we've got a Hydra hanging out right over here, ready to charge in or let loose some flame. So we'll do the moves, we'll do the rally test, and we will check back in here at the bottom half of turn 3. Now, checking in on the rally test for these militia. They are outside of the general's leadership over there, so they're going to need to hit a 7 or less. And by golly, folks, the trend continues. They are going to run. Let's see how far. Anything probably under over a 3, and they're off the table. Look at that. So here we go. They are going to go ahead and follow the shoreline, but even if they went in a straight path, they are still just barely on the board. But I am going to have them follow the shoreline because it just wouldn't make sense to jump into a dangerous river. So next we're going to roll for the High Elf hero who fled away from that group of Corsairs after charging into their flank and failing to kill a single one. He is just barely within 12 inches of the general, and so he'll test off his leadership 10. And there we go. 6 is good enough. And he will turn around to face the enemy once more. So not much movement here. The spearmen charged a squig, and the archers wheeled themselves to shoot at either another squig or the scouts. Haven't decided that yet. Everything else pretty much stayed in place because it either needs to shoot, has already fled, or can't go anywhere because they're already locked in combat. So let's dive into shooting. So we're going to start shooting on the High Elf side of the board, and here is the dilemma. Do we take a single shot with the bolt thrower at strength 5 and try and wound the Hydra, who's toughness 6, on a 5-up, or do we fire a volley, which will hit at strength 4 and wound on 6s, but we get 4 shots? And thinking about it, I think we're going to risk the single shot. If it lands, it does cause D4 wounds, which will be helpful. So here we go, firing in. They hit on a base of 3, but he is a large target for +1. Here we go, hitting on a 2+. Oh my gosh, folks, you can't make this up. Apparently, the smell of the Hydra's breath is just so bad, so potently disgusting, that these High Elves, they can't even open their eyes. They can't sight the bolt thrower right, and the shot just veers right off into the distance. Now, over here, the archers can either shoot at that squig in between the pistolier and the spears, or they can shoot at some of those scouts that are skirmishing, which are unengaged with the pistolier. And those squigs have just been, they really did a number on me last turn. I think it's probably in their best interest to try and put that one down before he can eat anything else. So we're going to fire a volley into that squig. So the archers did move slightly to align their fields of fire with the squig, so they will count as having moved, which will bring their roll to hit up to a 4. 5 shots going out, and 2 hits. Strength 3, toughness 3, 4s to wound, and neither one wound. The bad luck for the High Elves and Empire seems to be continuing here in the bottom half of the third. All right, our cannon is going to try and help out the knights and lay a cannonball right into that troll on the end there. I'm not sure if cannons can fire into close combat. I've looked through the rule book here. I don't see anything one way or another, but it does say that they fire on a line, and anything hit in the, anything in that line gets hit. So since the troll is hanging over the edge here, I'm going to just play it my own house rule that the troll can potentially be hit if I guess right and the numbers work out right. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't have a great deal of faith in this cannon crew, but we're going to try. They're going to try and help out their general and the handful of knights who are left. Let's see. I'm going to guess an initial distance of 6 inches. So that is where my initial guess of 6 puts me. A little further than I would have hoped, but hey, you live with it. So we're going to roll here. I'm going to need a low roll. I think maybe a 4 or a 2 to still be able to hit this troll. Here's hoping for low. And a 10. It shoots way over that troll. So for those who are paying attention at home, that's where the ball lands. It's going to bounce off harmlessly into that open field behind. And once again, our cannon crew swings and misses. So with what was perhaps the most forgettable shooting phase in all my battles so far, we will now move into close combat. And once again, we will start down on the High Elf side of the table. So here we are. I'm not going to make you wait for it, folks. We're going to dive right into the continuing epic saga of High Elf Lord versus Dark Elf Lord. And here we are. Both of them have 2 wounds. The next one to land a wound on the other will kill him. So the Dark Elf is going to lead off the fight because his side won the last round of close combat, which is what is the tiebreaker here in 5th edition when both sides have the same initiative. So here we go. 4 attacks, equal weapon skill, hitting on 4s. And that's 3, folks. That does not bode well for our High Elf Lord. Here come 3 wounds, strength 4 to toughness 4, needing 4s. And there's 1. 1, however, is enough if our High Elf Lord cannot make his armor save. He has a modified armor save of 4 or better, and that's what he needs to see here if he wants to stay alive and strike back. And folks, that's it. A big fat 1, and our High Elf Lord goes down. So unfortunately, I cannot pull the High Elf Lord off of his mount, but we just have to imagine that he slumps in his saddle and falls to the ground. I did change the wound dice over to 3, so there's no confusion on that. And then we are going to get to roll on the monster reaction table. So we roll a d6 to see what the Griffin here does. A 5. The monster remains where it is, but will turn to face the nearest enemy. If any enemy approach within charge range, it will charge them. If in hand-to-hand combat, the monster will fight normally. If the opportunity arises, it will use any breath weapon to attack the nearest enemy. So our Griffin is going to stand fast, guard the body of his master, and strike back at the Dark Elf Lord. Our Griffin has 4 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hits. Let's see if he can wound. Strength 6 to toughness 4. He needs a 2 or better. He does it. Now our Dark Elf Lord will have a armor save modified up from a 2+ to a 5+ from the Strength 6 attack. So a 5+, and our Dark Elf Lord will survive this. If not, he will fall next to the body of his foe. And that is a 1. So the Dark Elf Lord will fall beneath the claws of the angry Griffin. Perhaps it is fitting that both foes, both elven lords, one dark, one high, have fallen next to each other on the field of battle. But what that means, folks, is that every unit in the High Elf and Dark Elf army now is going to take an immediate panic test. So we are just going to work down the line here, starting with the repeater bolt thrower crew, who need an 8 to stick around. And that's a 10. They are running. Let's see how far they go. That is an 8. They may be off the table. And they are. They're gone. They had already had the stinking breath of that Hydra blowing in their faces, burning their nostrils. And to see their general go down was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and they took off. Next up, we will check with those spearmen whose bravery has inspired many throughout the game today. Surely it will not fail now. And it does not. Coming up 5. So they're sticking around. Perhaps they can inspire the archers next to them. Hey, archers, what do you say? 8 or less? You'll stick around to see the rest of the day. And they're out of here. 2d6 to see how far they run. And 8 will probably carry them off the board. I spoke a little too soon. They had a couple inches to spare, but they are not far from the table's edge. Rolling next for our High Elf hero, who only recently found his courage and turned his horse back around. What will you do, High Elf hero? And you're gone too. No one here could ever suspect you of bravery, good sir. And you're going to be departing us with 3d6. And that looks like 11. He's long gone. Farewell, good so-called hero. We truly hardly knew thee. And last, the 4 remaining sword masters of Hoeth. Surely these elite infantry will not turn their tails and flee. And just barely, they stick around. Now it is the Dark Elves' turn to test their resolve. These Cold One Knights must see if they have the mettle to stick around after the death of their brave general. On Leadership 8, here we go. Oh my, I never thought I'd see the day. The Cold One Knights, folks, have turned tail and run. 3d6. And there we go. They flee 12. Now, importantly, the High Elves cannot pursue, and they cannot pursue because the Cold One Knights did not break as a result of the combat. They were panicked by the death of their general, and so they can pursue, they can flee unpursued. Strike that. So I'm checking the rule here, and what it is that if you panic while in close combat, you can be pursued if the enemy won the preceding round. However, the High Elf Spearmen have lost every single round against the Cold One Knights, so they cannot pursue. And even if they had won, the Banner of Defiance that they have here does not allow them to pursue. So the High Elf Spearmen will stand firm, count their blessings that they're still even alive to see this day, this moment, when they see the tails of the Cold Ones wagging, and they're just going to be happy they're still alive for the moment. And so here is where the Cold One Knights end up after running from the death of their general. And now it's time for the Corsairs to play the same game. Can you roll 8 or less? And look at that, folks. They cannot. They have seen enough themselves without that Dark Elf general there to bolster their courage, their mettle. And they are turning around and running back to their ships. They will flee 2d6. And only 3 inches. Now, it's a shame the Sword Masters cannot pursue, but as we just discussed, they did not win the last round of combat, so they're going to stand pat. And last but not least, we have our Dark Elf Scouts needing to see an 8 or less. Can they do it? And just barely with a 7. The Scouts stick around. Next up, we have the Empire Spearman charging the Squig Hopper, and first up will be the Empire Hero with 3 attacks at Weapon Skill 5, hitting on 3s. All 3 hit. And Strength 4 to Toughness 3, wounding on 3s. And 2 wound, and the Strength 4 will negate his 6+ save, so that is 1 dead Squig. Moving on here down the line, we will see if the Empire General can reach into the depths of his heroic heart and find a way to slay these trolls. So with higher initiative, he is going to hit on 4s because, again, these are river trolls and they are slimy, so they're -1 to hit. And that's 2 hits. He's going to be Strength 4 to Toughness 4, wounding on 4s. 1 wounds. Next up, we've got the Empire Champion in the black armor with 2 attacks, hitting on 4s. 1 hits, wounding on 4s. It will wound. And one more wound will drop that troll. Our last knight in the front rank carrying the standard bearer. Can you cleave that troll down? Hitting on 4s. And he misses. It's now up to the warhorses. 3 mighty fine steeds. Hitting at the trolls on 4 or better. Strike that. 5 or better. They're both weapon skill 3, so with a -1 hit, our horses are going to need 5s. And 1 does get through. He's going to need another 5, though, to put down that troll. And folks, he did it. That is how it's done. Now it's the troll's turn to strike back with 6 attacks hitting on 4s. And look at that, 4 hits. Wounding on 2s. That's 2. -2 modifier for the troll's strength 5 attacks. That will take our Empire Knights from a 2 to a 4+ armor save. Can they do it? 1 does, but 1 will fall, leaving only the standard bearer and the musician left. Now our Goblin Wolf Riders and their steeds will attack. There's only 2 in base contact with the remaining knight in the rear rank. And since the Goblins and the Wolves will both hit on 4s and they're both strength 3, we're going to roll them all together. 4 attacks hitting on 4s. That's 1, needing a 4 or better to wound. And it fails to wound. Now here's the fun part, folks. We get to roll for regeneration. On a 4 or better, each of those 3 wounds comes back. And he got 1 of them this time. So Mr. Troll will stand back up with 2 wounds. 1 wound. So let's talk through a little combat res here. The Empire side did 1 wound. They do have a standard bear. And you know what? I just realized I forgot to roll for the knight in the rear rank against the goblins. So let me do that right now. So the knight in the rear rank blowing his trumpet, hitting on 3s. And he misses. Let's see if his warhorse can show him up, hitting on 4s. The warhorse does hit on a 6, and he will need a 4 better to drop that goblin like a sack of potatoes. Oh, no such luck. So the combat will end as we originally were going to set it up with. So the Empire has done 1 wound. They do have 1 standard. The Goblins and Trolls have done 1 wound. Now, you're thinking probably, well, where's their 2 for their rear charge bonus? Well, they don't get it because critically, the Goblins have lost a model. So, by the rules, you need to have at least 5 models in your unit to qualify for a flank or rear attack bonus. And if the Goblins only have 4, they're not going to get it. And critically, that means the Empire is going to win this round of the combat by 1. Now, both the Trolls and the Wolf Riders are within 12 inches of the Night Goblin General over there by the bridge. And that's important because they're going to be able to test off his leadership 7, which is going to get dropped by 1 to 6. Here we go, rolling for the Trolls first. And they're running. They are going to flee 2d6. They're running 12 inches back towards the camera. Now for our Goblin Wolf Riders, needing a 6 or less. And just barely, they hold on. So because the Empire Knights won the combat, they are going to be able to redress their ranks and expand their frontage to face the Goblin enemy next turn. Now our next combat of the round is going to see the Night Goblins connecting with the Halflings there who are at the foot of the bridge, on the stairs of the bridge there. And since they charge, the Night Goblins are going to hit first, starting with their big boss, who's got 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. And let's see. All of them hit. This ain't going to be pretty for the halflings. 4 hits at strength 4 to toughness 2 will be wounding on 2s. And miraculously, only 2 of them land. But the strength 4 will negate the halfling's armor, so 2 fall. Next up is the Goblin Battle Standard Bearer, who's going to be hitting on 3s with 2 attacks. Both hit. Strength 4, wounding on 2s. And again, miraculously, we get another 1, but 1 more halfling will fall. Cue the Lord of the Rings music and Samwise Gamgee yelling, "Frodo!" And lastly, there is 1 Night Goblin Trooper who's in base contact, hitting on 4s and wounding on 3s. Well, another miraculous wound that didn't land. But will that be enough to save our fun halfling friends? So let's do the combat res here. The Night Goblins killed 3 halflings, and they have a banner, and they have their battle standard bearer, and they have 3 ranks, and they have a flank attack. That's a lot. 9, in fact, which is enough, even though they're going to test off the Empire General's leadership to bring it down to 0, which is an impossible number to roll. So they should break automatically by rule. However, I like to have the little house rule where if you roll Snake Eyes, they have that just insane bravery rule and they stick around. So we're going to let them try for it. Here you go, halflings. If you can come up Snake Eyes, we're going to let you stick around and fight this one out. And not quite. So our halflings are going to be running 2d6. And they're going to fly 7. I don't really see anything to be gained from letting our Night Goblins try to restrain themselves. So they're going to pursue on 2d6. And they get 8. So they're running those halflings down. And as you can see here, they just miss hitting the fleeing militia by the narrowest of margins. And so that is how we will end turn 3. The Night Goblins in hot pursuit of the Empire State Militia. The cannon crew looking around wondering what the heck is going on. And that is a fair question because somehow these trolls broke and fled, and the Night Goblins stuck around. The Knights have turned around. Wolf Riders have stuck around, and the Knights have turned around to face them. And wow, just wow, we've got some squig hoppers still hopping around, sowing chaos. And oh my, look at that. I forgot 1 combat here, folks. So we're going to resolve this one real quick. 2 Dark Elf Scouts hitting on 3s. Both hit, wounding on 4s. 1 wound. Can the Empire Pistolier save it on a 5-up? And he does, and he'll strike back. First up with his pistol, hitting on 4s. Does hit, wounding on 3s. Does wound, that'll kill 1 Dark Elf. And then his hand weapon attack, hitting on 4s. Wounding on 4s. And the Dark Elf will get a 6-up save. Can he do it? No, he can't. Another Dark Elf falls. So, having lost 2, the Dark Elves now need to take a break test. -2 from leadership 8 is 6, needing a 6 or less. And they fail. They're going to run. 2d6. Looks like a 7. And our Empire Knight is going to pursue on 3d6. And that is an 8, so he's going to ride him down. Look at that, folks. It's going to take him right into the back of that squig hopper, so he will be fighting in close combat with that little guy in the next round. What a turn this has been. The death of both elf generals over here on the flank, the panicking Dark Elves, the panicking High Elves running away. Folks, and somehow these knights over here are still alive. This is not the turn I expected. I wouldn't have dreamed this up in 100 years, and yet this is what happened. This is what's happened here on the bottom half of turn 3, and this is what I love about Warhammer. It can turn on a dime, and it's going to tell you a new story every time it does. So with that, we're going to head right into turn 4 and see what kind of madness this game's got in store for us. So folks, there's one thing that I missed in all my excitement, and that is that units have to take a panic test if a friendly unit broke within 12 inches of them. And I completely forgot to do that before working out the pursuit results. So we're just going to go ahead and roll off. We know the generals were in range for all their troops there because they were testing off their leadership. So first we're going to roll and check on the Empire General there, leadership 9, and he's okay. Then we've got our common Goblin archers over here, testing off leadership 7 from their Goblin General. They're okay. Then testing over here on the Empire Cannon off the General's leadership 9. They're okay. Testing for the Night Goblin General's leader unit off his leadership 7. And they're okay. And next we have these guys on the bridge. The Empire Musketeers. They are not in range of the General's leadership, so they will need a 7 or less. They do it. And last but not least, these Wolf Riders, I keep trying to call them Night Goblins. I don't know what's wrong with me. These Wolf Riders will need to test off the General's leadership of 7. And they do it. So everybody passes. It ends up just like we had it a moment ago. I'm glad to see that result because I'd hate to go back and have to move things around. So, and this is the most exciting way for it to end anyway. This is the way it's meant to end. And with that, we will head, without further ado, into turn 4 and see what's next. All right, leading things off at the top of turn 4 here, the Goblins are going to try and rally these Trolls. Unfortunately for them, they are outside the 12-inch radius of the General's leadership, and so they have to test on the Trolls' base leadership of 4. So they're going to need a low roll here to get these Trolls turned around. And that's an 8. That's not going to be good enough. Trolls are going to keep running 2d6. Looks like 12 inches. And that will be enough to take them off the table. Bye, Trolls. Next up, those Night Goblins are going to charge the fleeing militia. The militia will continue to flee 2d6. They flee 10. And the Night Goblins will pursue. And they pursue 9. So both will flee off the table. Well, the militia will flee off the table and the Night Goblins will pursue off the table. Next up, we're going to take a bound monster test for the Hydra over there. I've been doing these off camera since the game began, but we're going to do it here to see if he can make a charge this round. And he can. So now we have to decide, is he going to charge the Griffin? Well, I think that's probably the only one he can get, because I don't think he can get to those Spearmen. So Griffin is going to get charged by our Hydra. There we go. That should prove to be an interesting one. And while I was busy on the Goblin side of the field, I forgot to do the rally attempts here on our Cold One Knight and our Corsair unit. So let's go ahead and roll those now. Rolling first for the Corsairs. And they don't get it. They need an 8 or lower. They got a 9, so they're going to flee 2d6. 3. I think that's what they got last time. So it's not so much a running away. They're kind of walking away slowly, maybe making some obscene gestures to the sword masters as they gradually fall back. Next up, we're going to test for those cold ones. They also need an 8 or less. Let's see what they can do. Oh, look at that, folks. The cold ones are still spooked. They're going to keep running. They're going 3d6 because those dinosaurs are fast. Let's see how far they go. And that looks like 13. So that is where things end up on the Dark Elf side of the field. The only one sticking around at this point is that War Hydra. Going back over here to the Goblin side of the table and getting into normal movement now that charges have all been declared. We're going to have these Goblins lose a rank to add more to their shooting frontage. Now, just in case anybody hasn't seen, these are the plastics from that 3rd edition Warhammer Regiments box. I had these models as a kid, and I just think they're really, really cool. They were that white plastic, and they're just great minis. They were great minis across the board. And that was the one where you got a little bit of every different faction in there. And these were the Goblins that they had, and I just love them. So here they are reformed for us into line formation. The only question is, who are they going to shoot? We could have them fire into the Knights in close combat, but risk hitting the Wolf Riders. We could have them fire at the cannon, but odds are most of their shots will then hit the cannon and bounce off it harmlessly. Or we could fire up at the bridge on those guys in hard cover. And maybe they could pull off some inflating fire on those spearmen over there. So I'm not convinced that they're all going to be able to hit those spearmen. They only have short bows, which are only 18 inches. I think we're just going to have them fire at that cannon crew and hope to get lucky on the hit allocation. So we have 9 normal goblins and 1 boss. The boss is going to be rolling the big dice there. They did move, and they are over half range, so that will take them from a base 4 to a 6 up to hit. The boss will hit on a 5. So little dice on 6s, big dice on 5 or better. Here we go. And of all of that, it looks like we just have 1 hit. So now we do hit allocation on a 1 through 4. It's going to hit the gun and bounce off harmlessly because strength 3 can't hurt toughness 7, which is what the cannon is. On a 5 or 6, it's going to hit one of the crew. That does hit a crew. Strength 3 to toughness 3 is going to need a 4 or better. And that's a 6, so that's going to drop one of the crew. Just for fun, we'll roll a d3 to see who gets hit. On a 1 or 2, it'll be a guy on the left with the stick. 3 or 4, guy with the feather. And 5 or 6, it'll be the guy with the book. 5 or 6, guy with the book. I think that's the guy in charge of the thing. So that's not good. Although, if he's the one in charge, it hasn't done much in any of these games. So maybe it's a good thing for them that he's getting wiped out. I don't know. We'll see. So that is 1 out of 3, which is over 25%. So they will need to make a panic test. We'll go ahead and do that now since we already got the camera lined up over here. I know technically you're supposed to wait till the end of the shooting phase, but nobody else is going to shoot at them. So we'll go ahead and roll it. Let's check to see, are they within 12 of the general's leadership? They are, so they'll need a 9 or less. Oh, but they get an 11, so they're running. Fleeing 2d6, 5 inches. And little do they know, but the next turn those goblins are going to come straight at them. So next up we have the Night Goblin Archers shooting into those spearmen. There's 14. We're going to do it in 2 volleys of 7. It is over half range, so they're going to need 5s to hit. Looks like we got 3 there. And the next 7. Looks like another 2 there for a total of 5. Strength 3 to toughness 3, wounding on 4s. and 2. And 2 armor saves at 5 up. And they both make it. They get their shields up in time. Yeah, way to go, boys. Now, as I'm doing this, I realized I forgot to move the squig, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So here's where our squigs end up. One hopped in front of the spearman, another hopped behind him, and that guy took one of the musketeers down before hopping down the bridge over in that direction. So speaking of shooting, another cool rule about the Hydra is that he can use his breath weapon in close combat. The Dark Elf book says that although it has many heads, when the Hydra breathes fire, several heads all breathe together, producing a single sheet of flame. The number of heads also means that the War Hydra is allowed to breathe fire, even if it is engaged in hand-to-hand combat and even if it charged in the same turn. So that's pretty cool. So the big dilemma that I've been having in this game is, should the Hydra shoot normal-looking fire, or should it shoot that cool green-looking fire? I'm still undecided on this, but if you have an opinion, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. So we used red before. We're going to use green this time, see how it goes. Anyway, he's going to hit everybody with that. All the spearmen are covered, and the griffin as well. So we'll go ahead and make those rolls to wound. However, since the Hydra does already have a wound on him, it's going to be strength 6 instead of strength 7, because the strength of his fire attack is linked to his wounds, as I mentioned earlier. And the other thing here too, they're not automatic hits. We're just going to have to roll for them here. So everybody's going to be, who's covered, is going to be hit on a 4+. So Spearman will be on the little dice. The Griffin will be on a big dice. And that looks like a lot of hits. So our Griffin is hit +4 Spearman. So we'll do the Griffin first, strength 6 to toughness 5, needing a 3 or better. He gets him. That'll be another wound, or first wound on the Griffin. And then 4 against the Spearman, strength 6 to toughness 3, needing 2s or better. And 3 Spearmen are going to go down. That will be enough to induce a panic test, needing 8 or less on 2d6. And they pass. Those brave Spearmen have stuck with us the entire game. I just wonder if there's going to be any left by the end of the game. So our Griffin has higher initiative and a higher weapon skill than the Hydra. With 4 attacks, he's going to be hitting on 3s. And looks like all of them hit. Hydra is toughness 6, so it'll wound on 4s. And that's 1 wound. And our Hydra has a 5-up save that is not modifiable by the strength of the attack. Doesn't get it, so he'll take 1 more wound. Now it's the Hydra's turn to strike back. 5 attacks, hitting on 4s. 2 hits. Strength 5 to toughness 5, wounding on 4s. And he gets 1. That leaves the Griffin with 3 wounds left. And the Hydra, since he put 2 wounds on the Griffin this turn, is going to win the combat by 1. Our Griffin is leadership 8, so with a -1, he'll need a 7 or lower on 2d6. And he's sticking around. That Griffin's not going anywhere. So in our combat over here with the Pistolier, the Squig has initiative 5, so he's going to strike first. Weapon skill 4 will hit the Pistolier on 3s. Pistolier got lucky. Both of those miss. Pistolier's turn to strike back. First up, firing his pistol, hitting on 4s. Does hit. Strength 4 to toughness 3 is a 3 or better to wound. It fails to wound, though. Gets lodged somewhere in that giant squig. And his second attack with his hand weapon, hitting on 4s. And that's a miss. So that combat will be a draw. And coming down the field here to our knights against the Goblin Wolf Riders, the Empire General will strike first. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. That's 3 hits. Strength 4 to toughness 3, wounding on 3s. That's 2. And the Goblins will get a modified 6-up save from the strength of the attack. Neither one. Next up is the Empire Champion. 2 attacks, hitting on 3s. 1 hit. Wounding on 3s. Fails to wound. And 2 knights are going to strike. Hitting on 3s. That's 2 hits. Wounding on 3s. And that's 2 wounds for 2 more 6-up saves. Neither one. And that will do it for the Wolf Riders. So that's a bit of good news for the Empire. Now heading into Empire turn 4, and we're going to go ahead and try and rally some troops here, see if we can't turn those cannon crew around before they run straight smack into those Night Goblins. They are going to need 7s or less. And they do. And over there, we're going to go ahead and check those High Elves needing 8 or less. And just barely, they'll turn around. And that does it for rallying. We will now move into movement. Recapping moves here, the Empire Knights were able to charge that swig there at the foot of the bridge. Empire Spearman charged that swig right in front of them. The Sword Masters charged the fleeing Corsairs, who continued to flee. And over here, the Spearmen turned around and executed a wheel in the hopes that maybe they will be able to charge the Hydra next turn. So not much to do in the shooting phase here. However, these High Elf archers are going to try and get that swig behind the Spearmen. They did move this turn. And they are... well, actually, they didn't move. They just rallied. So I don't think that counts as moving. But they are... so, yeah, they are going to shoot. Hitting on 3s. 1 is over half range, though. He's on the big dice. So little dice hitting on 3s are better. Big dice on 4 are better. And that is 4 hits. Strength 3 to toughness 3, wounding on 4. And 1 does get through. Little Squig Hopper is going to get a 6-up armor save. Can he do it? And he does. The little squig that could. Next up, these handgunners are going to unload a volley here onto the Night Goblin archers. We have 8 of them shooting at over half range, hitting on 5s. That's 4 hits, so above average result. Strength 4 to toughness 3, wounding on 3s. And 3 dead. Moving there to the Knights against the Squig, the Empire General will get 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. And it looks like 3 hits. And with his lance, he'll be wounding on 2s. And that's enough to spike a Squig. And coming over to this Squig over here, the Empire Hero will lead the attack. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s. 3 hits. Strength 4, toughness 3, wounding on 3s. And that is a dead Squig. And last but not least, we've got a hungry Squig over here who strikes first because of initiative 5. Hitting on 3s. That's 1 hit. Wounding on 2s. And he does it. And the strength 5 will negate the armor save of the last Pistolier. So the last Pistolier becomes lunch for 1 hungry Squig. Yum, yum, yum. Coming over here to our favorite combat, the Griffin again will strike first with a higher initiative. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. 2 hits. Strength 6 to toughness 6, wounding on 4s. And neither one gets through. Hydra time, 5 attacks, hitting on 4s. That is 4 hits. Strength 5 to toughness 5, wounding on 4s. And that's 1 more wound on our Griffin. So once again, the Griffin will lose by 1. He needs a 7 or less to stick around. And look at that, folks. That brave Griffin ain't going anywhere. Now that concludes turn 4. As per the way I do things, we're going to go ahead and roll a dice on a 1 or a 2. The game is going to end here and now. Let's see what happens. And it does, folks. So that is a wrap. A quick game here in terms of turns, ending a little early on turn 4, but sometimes that's the way it goes down. We'll go ahead and add up the victory points to see who won this thing. So here we go. Here we go, folks. This is the final victory point calculations as best as I can do them here. Each side got 1 for dispensing with the enemy general. There were no standards captured. And then on the Dark Elf side, they got the Bolt Thrower, the Shadow Warriors, the Illyrian Reavers, the High Elf Hero, the Militia, the Halflings, and the Pistoliers. You add that all up, you get 9. Now I didn't include separate points for the general because they're awarded a point there. So there you go. Even if I did, it'd still be 1 point aside, so it would come out in the wash anyway. I also didn't give points for the wizard because he was an independent character and the unit he was with survived. I think that's right, but if I'm wrong on that, feel free to let me know down in the comments and we'll fix that going forward. But then here on the High Elf and Empire side, they got 1 for nicking that Dark Elf General. 1 for the trolls, 1 for the squigs. Again, that's another one that was kind of weird because it says in the Orc and Goblin Army book that squigs are not a unit. You buy a bunch of them and they're all kind of independent. So it seemed kind of gamey to me to count. The battle book says you're supposed to count units under 100 points as 100 points, and it would be weird to count each squig as 1 point. That didn't feel right, so I just added up the total for all the squigs that were killed. That came up to a little over 100, so we gave 1 point for the squigs, the Wolf Riders for 1, and then this is where the Empire really was fortunate that the game ended with these Dark Elf Cold Ones and Corsairs running, because that gave them 5 points and then 1 for the Scouts. You add all that up, you get 10. So the narrowest of victories here for the High Elves and Empire. Perhaps it feels right if we take a look at the field here. You do have the Dark Elves in retreat, and the High Elves are pushing forward. But, you know, honestly, who knows what would have happened if this game went on one more turn. If that Hydra seemed to be beating the Griffin in combat. If he would have felled that Griffin, who knows? If these guys would have rallied next turn, that would definitely take away their victory points. And who knows what would have come of that confrontation down there between the Night Goblins and the Empire General on a future turn. But we will never know. But this feels right to me. It was an ambush, but the Allied High Elves and Empire did hold together by the skin of their teeth. They did avoid a complete rout, and the Empire General there was able to somehow survive by being able to rout those trolls and turn his unit around, take over the Wolf Riders, and ride back there to try and meet the Night Goblins. So this was a fun one to play out. It was a much larger battle than I've done before, so I apologize that some of the order of things got messed up, and I'm sure I missed a couple things here and there that you probably caught. You do have my apologies. I do my best, but I am not perfect. And anyway, I hope it was a fun watch. It was a lot of fun to play, and we'll see what we have in store for next time. We'll take a look through the battle book, see what feels like a good one to jump into next. My goal here is to play through all 10 scenarios in the battle book for the channel, and we'll look to try and do that over the course of this year. So anyway, folks, thanks for joining me. It's always great to have you here to watch. It's a lot of fun to film these, knowing that you're out there enjoying them. And until next time, keep painting, keep playing, and keep hobbying.